Live from CAN-TV Studio A, I'm Andy Zopp, and this is Chicago Newsroom 2.0. Roundtable regulars Sufyan Sohel, Ashley Munson, along with Chalk Beat's Rima Amin, join me to discuss the growing list of challengers lining up to succeed Dick Durbin in the U.S. Senate, Governor Pritzker's upcoming trip to Washington, and Mayor Johnson's latest challenges leading the city of big shoulders. Later, I'll sit one-on-one with the founder of the new co-working space 1921 Co-working, James Parker, to discuss the organization's commitment to train, fund, and launch tech and manufacturing startups on the Southside of Chicago. I'll also be joined by the leaders of Xchange Chicago, a new collaborative effort aimed at helping Chicagoans land jobs in the tech field. But first, on the other side of the break, I'll sit with Richard Wallace and Dr. Clinton Boyd Jr. to discuss the recently released report that charts a bold path to unlocking economic power for Black men in Chicago. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Dr. Norcott. On the next edition of Be Well, we'll examine the stressors and internal conflicts faced by those of us who are the firsts in our families or communities to step into new territory with my guest, Dr. Shanta Kanukolu. Join the conversation on CAN-TV Cable Channel 19 or stream live on cantv.org or on the CAN-TV Plus app. Elevated conversation and storytelling, experience the power of community television.
CAN-TV is the lens through which Chicago's stories are told, harnessing the unifying power of community television. With CAN-TV On Demand, immerse yourself in the richness of our city through exclusive stories and programs tailored just for you, connecting you to the heartbeats of our streets, the voices of our people, and the spirit that makes Chicago unique. Discover the strength of your community on CAN-TV On Demand. For more than 40 years, CAN-TV has been Chicago's voice, your voice. We've shared your stories, amplified your concerns, and celebrated your triumphs. Now we want to hear from you. What programs matter most? What issues should we cover? How can we better serve your community? Visit cantv.org/feedback today. CAN-TV. Experience the power of community television.
Every community has a story, a pulse, a voice waiting to be heard. At CAN-TV, we bring these stories to life, from the heart of Chicago to your living room. Join us in supporting hyper-local television. Your backing helps us cover what matters directly in our communities, unfiltered and upfront. Help tell the important stories of our communities. Become a program underwriter today.
During a recent City Club of Chicago presentation, two leading community organizations unveiled groundbreaking research addressing one of the city's most persistent economic challenges, the underemployment of Black men. Equity and Transformation and Fathers, Families, and Healthy Communities released their collaborative report, Breaking the Chains, Reclaiming Wealth, Power, and Dignity for Black Men, offering both a stark assessment of Chicago's Black male unemployment crisis and a comprehensive roadmap for solutions. Drawing from focus groups and restorative conversations with over 170 Black men and fathers from Chicago, the report shines a light on how Chicago ranks lowest among major U.S. cities for Black male labor force participation, a crisis deepened by the COVID-19 pandemic, but rooted in generations of systemic exclusion. Joining me to discuss this powerful report are leaders from the two organizations that commissioned it, Richard Wallace, Executive Director of Equity and Transformation, and Dr. Clinton Boyd Jr., Executive Director, Fathers, Families, and Healthy Communities. Gentlemen, welcome. I'm so glad to have you, and looking forward to talking about the report. So let's start with why. What prompted the development of this report, and how did you two come to work together on it? So I'll start with you, Richard.
Yeah, so I think I was encouraged to get into the research around the Black unemployment crisis due to a statistic that came out that said essentially that only 63% of Black men nationwide were engaged in the labor force, and then in Illinois it was 53. And so the question came up that related to why.
Right.
And so it was more than just calling one person to identify the why. I said, you need to actually bring those people into space and ask them the question of why. And so we launched a series of focus groups where we interviewed 100 black men that were all formerly incarcerated, system impacted, to better understand what are the barriers to employment for you. And I think the most important thing that for me was the fact that for those individuals, that meant 49% of folks in Illinois were detached from the very system that was built for their survival. So
explain what you mean by that.
And what I mean by that is that, this is not an agrarian society. Like, you have to sell your labor in order to get a wage to buy the things you need.
Right.
I mean, food, water, shelter, everything has a price ticket. And so when you're not attached to the labor system, then you're ultimately out here without an income, right? And so for us, we were like, this is a crisis, and we have to do something about it.
And how did you two start collaborating? How did the collaboration come about?
Yeah, so just building on the points that Richard so eloquently made, our funder was actually the one that brought us together, being the Chicago Workforce Funders Alliance. And so as they reached out to Equity and Transformation to conduct some research with black men and fathers to better understand what was behind this dire statistic related to unemployment, they also reached out to us. And so at Fathers, Families, and Healthy Communities, as our name suggests, we provide a lot of direct services to black fathers, many of whom are returning citizens here in the Chicagoland area. And whenever you're talking about fatherhood and economic opportunity, or the lack thereof, it has real implications for family life within the black community. And so when the funders approached me with the opportunity to be a part of this project, it was a no-brainer for me that this is something that I wanted to throw the organization behind, because I saw it as an opportunity to really lean into our organizational values and also do more to shift the discourse around how black men and black fathers are viewed, not only in this city, but nationally, because oftentimes we're viewed through the lens of deficiency. But I saw this as an opportunity for us to shine a spotlight on the real life stories of black men and black fathers who oftentimes, and we learned this through our research, doing the best that they can despite the systemic inequities and barriers that stand in their way.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the barriers. You identified a number of them. Well, what were the ones that you think are most entrenched, are going to be hardest for us to address? I'll start with you, Dr. Boyd.
Yeah, well, I would say similar to EAT, FFHC, 100% of the black men and fathers that we interviewed for our focus groups were formerly incarcerated individuals. And so when you just think about the collateral consequences associated with mass incarceration, it just makes it very difficult for black men to find and secure stable employment within the legal economy. And for those who are fortunate enough to secure employment, oftentimes they are confronted with occupational challenges in terms of mobility, because they're not always guaranteed opportunity to be promoted within their company or organization that they work within. And so you just think about what that means for the income they're able to generate. What does that mean for the type of resources they can bring home and put on the table, especially if we're thinking about fathers being the traditional economic provider or breadwinner for the family. When a man is unable to provide in a way that is personally meaningful for him, it's almost as if it's a dagger to the heart.
Right.
And it's very difficult for them to live up to the personal expectations they have connected to manhood and fatherhood, and it makes it very difficult for them to have the type of relationships they truly desire with their children.
Were you going to add to that?
Same thing. Access to employment is just key. It should never be negotiated away. There are over 1,100 collateral consequences, or we call permanent punishments, after incarceration, meaning that after a person has served their sentence, when they return home, there's 1,100 doors that are literally shut that they can never re-enter. And most of those are related to employment, education, and housing. And so if we actually want to see equity in the city of Chicago, we want to see parity, right, fairness, then you have to open the doors and address those collateral consequences and essentially say, once you have served your time is done, you're home. Now, how do we start at ground zero and build you up,
right,
opposed to continue to push you down?
Yeah, you talk about something in a report called targeted universalism in the solutions. What is that? Is that related to what you're talking about?
Yeah, targeted universalism. I want to, I got to lift up my brother in the Haas Institute in California out of Berkeley. They came up with the framework of targeted universalism. And what that essentially means is that we set universal goals for the entire city of Chicago, for example, right? But then you build targeted interventions to address the specific needs of targeted communities, right? Like there's no one size fits all to this problem. And so it's really a framework to get to the root of the issue and the root, and then invest and build solutions around one group at a time until we get to that parity or that equity. But it is around universal goals. And I think the universal goal for the city is everyone should be housed, everyone should be employed, and everyone should have a living wage, right? And so that is how we break down targeted universalism.
I mean, it sounds like so easy, right? You're like, well, duh, everyone should be educated and everyone should have housing and food. But we know it's really challenging. So what's next? Now you've done the research. What I love about the report is it doesn't just talk about the difficult facts. It talks about what can we do about it. So what next? How are you driving to solutions?
Yeah. So what we've dubbed is our blueprint for transformation. It's basically a policy agenda that we've spelled out in considerable detail at the conclusion of the report that we feel will allow us to accomplish a couple of things. One, when we had this conversation about inequity as it pertains to Black men, we can't have it without also acknowledging wealth inequality that exists as well. And so what does it mean for us to have wealth redistribution policies that are targeted towards Black men, Black families, and the Black community that will help to eliminate the racial wealth gap that exists within our city and within the country, quite frankly. And we list several strategies that we believe will allow us to accomplish that, from reparations to guaranteed income, thinking about other shared equity housing models and things of that nature. We also believe that there's an opportunity for us to shift public dollars further upstream. And so something that we talk about, and Richard talks about this a great deal in a compelling fashion, is that when we think about all of the targeted investments that went into creating mass incarceration, they didn't need any proof that that was going to be the best way for us to address some of the societal ills that were quote unquote plaguing our community. However, we need to think more about what does it mean to invest in comprehensive early education? What does it mean to provide education from K through 12, specifically in those industries that are connected to high growth sectors, to our men in the community who have marketable skills, but they are unable to gain entry into those type of educational opportunities. And the last thing I would say is invest in fathers.
Invest in fathers. So you saw me coming. Unfortunately. But a very important point to finish on. Thank you for taking the time to do this research for this comprehensive report. I assume people can find the report online if they go to your website.
You can go to www.eatchicago.org. It's hosted there. And it's both of our reports that we're sharing.
Terrific. Well, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And thank you for all the work that you're doing to help make our city better. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Darius Hillman. Joining me on a special one-hour edition of In the Arena, a once-in-a-lifetime conversation with a once-in-a-generation leader, librarian, author, curator, and one of Time Magazine's 100 most influential people in the world, Tracy Hall.
And I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. We have to make the connections and we have to fight for what's right, because if we don't, there's too much to lose. So I'm not interested in the Kool-Aid. I'm interested in justice. I'm not interested in the Kool-Aid and who made it and who drank it. I'm interested in equity. I'm interested in peace. I'm interested in us calling out and saying that war is wrong and that death is not the point of history.
Join us for this very special conversation on CAN TV Cable Channel 19 and streaming on cantv.org and the CAN TV Plus app. Experience the power of community television.
CAN TV is the lens through which Chicago's stories are told, harnessing the unifying power of community television. With CAN TV On Demand, immerse yourself in the richness of our city through exclusive stories and programs tailored just for you, connecting you to the heartbeats of our streets, the voices of our people, and the spirit that makes Chicago unique. Discover the strength of your community on CAN TV On Demand.
I'm financial expert Tamara Durbin. On the next episode, we'll talk about the why behind your budgeting with my guests, Winfred Burns and Arnell Brady. Join the conversation Wednesday at 7 p.m. exclusively on CAN TV Cable Channel 19 or stream live on cantv.org or on the CAN TV Plus app. Elevated conversation and storytelling. Experience the power of community television.
Tonight, we're tracking 3 major political flashpoints making headlines across Illinois and the nation. First, the race is officially on to replace U.S. Senator Dick Durbin, with Durbin announcing he will not seek re-election. The field is beginning to take shape. Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton, Congresswoman Robin Kelly, and Congressmen Raja Krishnamoorthi have all entered the race, signaling what could be a historic and highly competitive Democratic primary. We'll break down what's at stake and who else may be eyeing a run. Next, Governor J.B. Pritzker is preparing to testify before Congress amid growing scrutiny over sanctuary city policies alongside other Democratic governors. Pritzker will face questions about how states are managing migrant arrivals and what federal support or accountability should look like. We'll examine the political implications and what this means for Illinois. And finally, Mayor Brandon Johnson is confronting mounting political challenges, from turmoil at Chicago Public Schools and sharp criticism over the newly named CTA CEO to a business-backed campaign building a $10 million war chest aimed at unseating him. What does this growing opposition signal for his administration's stability and agenda? Our Roundtable regulars are back to help us unpack these stories and what they mean for leadership, equity, and the future of Chicago and Illinois. Let's get started. Sufyan Sohel, chair of the Cook County Human Rights Commission, and Ashley Munson, host of Munson Tonight. Are welcome back. It's so good to see you both again. So let's get started. So the Senate race already getting a little crowded, right? So what do we think? For me, it doesn't seem like a big surprise about any of them. I think. Well, how about you?
First of all, great to be here. I think it's so much happening, right? I think if you look at the candidates, first of all, it's just beginning, right? I think Lieutenant Governor Juliana had a strategy of hopping out first and getting all the first endorsements, and then Congresswoman Kelly right behind her, and then we're still looking at Representative Underwood, and then we have Raja Krishnamoorthi, representative that has $19 million in the bank. So it's so much happening. I think it's a lot of strategy happening. I think it's a lot of formation happening with their teams, but I think we have a long way to go. I do think it's going to come down to money and a ground game. I think it depends on how much Pritzker gives Stratton and what that race looks like, because you need money for the state to run the race, right? And then it comes to ground game. I think it was a recent poll that polled Underwood, Kelly, and Stratton, and they basically had the same polling levels, and so it's going to come down to ground game, the knocking on the doors, the talking to people about issues. So it's exciting. I'm ready for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody has something, right? So, Lieutenant Governor Stratton, not only as, statewide officer, but also brought in some big endorsements, including the governor and Senator Duckworth, really big. But Raj Krishnamurthy has a lot of money, right? And that matters. But Robin Kelly also has a long track record. She's well liked, and she has major endorsements from the Black Caucus, members of the Black Caucus who are very popular, which should be helpful here. So, what do you think? Anyone? And what about Representative Underwood? There's some concern about her getting into the race. I think I saw an article earlier this week about there'll be 3 black women in the race fighting against each other, and that's not good. So.
I go between, thank you for having us, and I go between being really excited about this and kind of already over it. Just hearing, sometimes you're hearing the crap between them and how they're talking about each other and some of that already in the game, and we're a week in, 2 weeks in, and it's already starting, and I think not excited to see how those conversations escalate. But I think it's fascinating. You mentioned potentially 3 black women, right? If Raja Krishnamurthy wins, then we're talking about potentially 2 Asian representatives from the state of Illinois who come from the same district. Right. So it's who are Illinois people going to want? What does representative of our full communities look like? And I'm really intrigued to see what as you said, the ground game of how they're going out to connect with voters from across the state, because they're also predominantly from the Chicagoland area, even though they may have some roots or connections downstate, but I mean, they all live up here now, and how are they going to really connect to people south of I-80?
Yeah, I think that's really important. But I think one thing that's great about it is they're all, experienced elected officials who have generally have very good track records, are competent, they're smart, their positions are in touch with reality. It's kind of nice to see that. I hope that, as you said, I hope we can avoid the trash talking, and because each of them has something to say about their own competencies, and that should really be the conversation. Like, why you, not why not them, right? So, but we'll see. We certainly shall see. I know you're like, oh, that's so not happening.
But they all have such good stories too, which I think need to be uplifted and shared.
Here's the sad thing about politics. As you know, I ran for office, and nobody really wants to do the negative, but here the negative works, right? Yeah. So if you're trying to run, right, and you're trying to win, right, unless you really do kind of that, I'm just not going to do that. Unfortunately, the negative works. That's how, that's the sad thing for me about American politics.
Agreed.
Anyway, we will see. But let's move on to Governor Pritzker, who's following Mayor Johnson to Washington. Governor Pritzker, although he's been to Washington many, many, many times, but going to testify. So he's going to take his place on the stand where the Republican Congress gets to berate him about being a sanctuary city. How do you think he's going to fare?
I think he's going to do well. I think he has really very little to lose and so much to gain, and I think it's going to help really reframe Illinois values on a national stage in a great way. I think he definitely will be under attack for whatever he says, especially in protection of our sanctuary state policies and the Trust Act. But I'm excited for him to go and speak on the behalf of some of our most vulnerable communities in DC.
What about, the actually talking about our response? Things that it used to be like the migrant issue was a daily crisis in the paper, and we don't hear about it that much in the news, but it hasn't gone away. We're still getting some migrants coming in, and we still have also have communities on the south and west sides who say, wait a minute, you've spent all this money on people who just showed up, and we're still lacking resources. What about that question?
I think it's a really important one, and I wish we had the dollars to support all communities that lived in our state, and and how do we support those that choose to call it home? But I also feel at times, being a civil rights attorney, I see how this is used against communities often, of pitting one against another, and how do we make our communities more divisive so we can deflect from other issues that are happening locally and nationally. And I think he has an opportunity to show that we're all in this together, and I really hope he takes advantage of that.
Right. I hope so as well. I think it'll be really important. But I also think you're right. It shouldn't be about pointing, pitting, particular communities against each other. It should be about how do we figure out how to help as many people. So I was glad to hear you say that. So we've talked before about Pedro Martinez is leaving, and the school board is getting ready to do a search, or they're undertaking a search. How do you think that's going, that effort? We've heard some good things. We've heard some not so good things. What do you think?
I think it's definitely an effort. I was trying to think about how to respond to that question. It's definitely an effort. I think Mayor Johnson still has a lot to prove, and his candidate of choice for the time being, I think we got to look at the rules that were already in place, right? The board voted for whoever is the next CEO of Chicago Public Schools. You have to have a superintendent license, and that was March. We are in May, and now it's like, hey, we can put CBZ as this candidate, but she doesn't have it. So now you want to talk about overturning that to make exceptions for her? Like, we got to evaluate, which is why I said it's an effort. I do think we have to keep in mind that CPS and all the issues from the budget with CTU and all the things that's been happening, I think it's challenging across the board. No mayor can fix every issue overnight, but I think we have to be critical in the decisions that we're making now and be intentional moving forward. So I think we have a long way to go with everything else that's happening in Chicago and Illinois, but it's definitely an effort underway. We can say that.
Well, I think for those of us who care super deeply about CPS, it's a little challenging also because the chief education officer has recently announced that she's leaving. So how does the board start thinking about stability and finding an interim that can help drive, at least while we're doing the search?
I mean, I struggle with the fact that we're still talking about some of these issues, right? And they're ongoing, and that they haven't been able to find a resolution for some of these things. I think they have to really think of what their intention and their mandate is, that they've been tasked to make sure that this is a successful and productive school district, and really start moving forward. And as you said, the effort needs to be shown and proven that results are on their way, and not just this ambiguous in-between state that we seem to be perpetually in.
Yeah, I think super important. But let's move on to politics around the mayor. So word came out last week that there's a group of business people, wealthy, I don't know if they're wealthy, but you assume because they raised $10 million. What does that say about Mayor Brandon Johnson? Should this be something he should be concerned about 10 million people raising money to defeat him 2 years before the election?
That's for me. Absolutely.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's all good. I was
kind of all over the place.
It's okay. I think absolutely. I think it shows how important the next 2 to 4 years will be, right? We have these races happening now, then the mayoral race, the governor's race, and then the presidential race. I think the next 4 years are going to be our version of House of Cards. It's going to be so interesting. And I think the money that they're talking about raising, I think you're going to see a lot of people buy into that just because they are unhappy with the mayor. And I'm not saying that the mayor hasn't made any progress, but if you read articles and you talk to people that are on the ground, a lot of people aren't happy. So I think it shows the aggressiveness of people preparing for the next election, even for some of the other seats, right? Congresswoman Jan Shisnowski, she's leaving, right. And Robert Peters is announcing for stuff. So I think it's just so many plays that are happening that Mayor Johnson should take that group seriously. Yeah, I would agree, but it also will depend, of course, who they decide to support, and let's hope that they're thoughtful about where they're going to invest their money. Does Mayor Johnson have a shot at redeeming himself? He's got 2 years. I think so, and he's already started making some progress in terms of reaching out and trying to connect, be more present in the communities, reaching to business leaders, and we were talking earlier about an apology tour of sorts, and I think it's important because he's doing the first step of acknowledging, hey, I haven't done a lot of things right, and so many leaders don't have the courage to do that, or they believe that
they just fight through it.
It's very hard to do in politics.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Clearly, he's taking the right steps and or taking some steps to be more vulnerable publicly, and I think that's is impressive in and of itself.
Agreed.
And unfortunately, as always, we've used up all of our time. Thank you so much for being here. It's always an insightful and enjoyable conversation. I appreciate you both. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Dr. Norcott. On the next edition of Be Well, we'll examine the stressors and internal conflicts faced by those of us who are the firsts in our families or communities to step into new territory with my guest, Dr. Shanta Kanukolu. Join the conversation on CAN TV Cable Channel 19 or stream live on cantv.org or on the CAN TV Plus app. Elevated conversation and storytelling, experience the power of community television.
CAN TV is the lens through which Chicago's stories are told, harnessing the unifying power of community television. With CAN TV On Demand, immerse yourself in the richness of our city through exclusive stories and programs tailored just for you, connecting you to the heartbeats of our streets, the voices of our people, and the spirit that makes Chicago unique. Discover the strength of your community on CAN TV On Demand. For more than 40 years, CAN TV has been Chicago's voice, your voice. We've shared your stories, amplified your concerns, and celebrated your triumphs. Now we want to hear from you. What programs matter most? What issues should we cover? How can we better serve your community? Visit cantv.org/feedback today. CAN TV. Experience the power of community television.
Every community has a story, a pulse, a voice waiting to be heard. At CAN TV, we bring these stories to life, from the heart of Chicago to your living room. Join us in supporting hyper-local television. Your backing helps us cover what matters directly in our communities, unfiltered and upfront. Help tell the important stories of our communities. Become a program underwriter today.
Chicago has no shortage of co-working spaces, but few carry the cultural legacy, mission, and intention of 1921 Co-working, a space rooted in Black excellence, entrepreneurship, and economic empowerment. Named in tribute to the year of the Tulsa Race Massacre, when Black Wall Street was destroyed, 1921 isn't just about desks and Wi-Fi, it's about rebuilding what was lost, fostering community, and creating a new ecosystem where Black and brown innovators, creatives, and change makers can thrive. Located on the city's south side, 1921 Co-working offers more than just a place to work. It's a hub for connection, mentorship, and movement building. With programs that support startups, small businesses, and social impact leaders, it's helping to shift the narrative around who gets to build and lead in Chicago's economic future. Tonight, we're joined by the founder behind this unique space to talk about how 1921 is honoring history while rewriting the future. James Parker, welcome to the newsroom.
Thank you very much.
Nice to see you again. Thank you. See, look at all that stuff you're doing. Amazing. So tell us, obviously the name 1921 is deeply symbolic. Mm-hmm. Talk about the meaning behind it and how you wanted to put that on the co-working space that you created.
Absolutely. Well, as many people know, Black Wall Street was this amazing part of American history, where over 600 Black-owned businesses, a thriving community. And my goal with 1921 was to pay homage to that and to remind young people, older people, and entrepreneurs that this is who we were 100 years ago. Right. I mean, less than 100, well, a little over 100 years ago, we had a thriving business. We were entrepreneurs. We knew how to support one another. And really the goal was to get back to the spirit of Black Wall Street.
Right, so move forward, but also stay connected to the past.
Exactly.
So why the co-working space?
If you're familiar with incubator spaces like 1871, the goal was to kind of merge both. Yeah. A co-working space where entrepreneurs and people can come and network and talk about different ideas. A tech incubator hub where we can say, hey, that's a great idea. that seems very viable. We could create a lot of jobs with that, and then we can train, fund, and then launch that very idea right out of the south side of Chicago.
So we have, as you know, Chicago has quite a few co-working spaces, and we also have incubators. So what makes 1921 distinct, and what gap were you trying to fill when you created it?
Absolutely. So one thing that we don't have is a tech incubator or manufacturing incubator that focuses on African American and Hispanic businesses. A lot of the tech incubators we have are great, but there's not a lot of black tech startups being launched out of that. And so my goal was to say, well, I noticed that a lot of tech incubators launch downtown. Well, what if we launch tech incubators in low-income and emerging communities? What if we said, hey, we're going to launch this app that's going to create 150 jobs in Roseland or Inglewood or Pilsen? Well, that's 150 jobs that the community now can take. And so the co-working space adds a lot of things: offices, vendor pop-up rooms. We're putting over 600 mailboxes in there to represent the 600 businesses from Black Wall Street.
Nice.
And so now small businesses can get their own mailbox with a business address, and we get their packages, meeting rooms, vendor pop-up rooms, content room to shoot your own commercials, and then training rooms where we'll be able to train in everything from entrepreneurship to everything that has to do with business and launching.
Wow. So it's not, but it's also not, as you said, it's more than just a co-working space, but it's also more than just a place, right? You're trying to build some community there. Talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So with the goal of launching these companies in the community, we need to be able to train individuals from the community. And so we're talking about $55,000, $60,000, $90,000 a year jobs when you work for a tech startup.
Right.
So we're working with a company called The Ideal Candidate, where we're able to foster young people, older people, to be the ideal candidate for these jobs. We also have our own tech support, help desk, and manufacturing certification program. So anyone who comes to that will be able to now work for any one of the startups, tech or manufacturing, that we launch. And that's how we'll be able to foster. So you can imagine 1,000 jobs in Roseland paying $60,000 a year, in Pilsen, in Inglewood. Now you have new homeowners. Now you have people able to have that freedom to not have to work 2 and 3 jobs.
Well, what if I'm, interested in a tech job? But I like tech. I play with it. I'm interested, but I don't know enough to go be a coder. Or what do you say to those people? How do you bring somebody in the fold who hasn't really had the experience to join a tech startup?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, the goal is this: when people come, we're opening up our application this fall. We already have 10 tech startups in the pipeline now.
Oh, wow.
So we have 7 tech and 3 manufacturing companies right now that we're training right now. Some have already been funded. We actually just launched the first Black-owned tech startup out of a Black-owned tech incubator on the south side of Chicago called Best Date Night. That app will create roughly 150 jobs that will go in the community.
Say it louder. Say it again.
That job?
No, what's the app?
Oh, the app is called Best Date Night.
Best Date Night?
Best
and
Date
what
Night.
does it do?
It is the first app to create date nights for couples. And so a lot of apps are out there for single people. This is the first one for couples, and it'll be ready this summer. It's fantastic. You don't have to plan anything. You just download the app and pick a date night, and it's already set up for you.
Well, that's pretty exciting. That sounds very cool.
I'm very excited.
So we've already got one.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So how do you balance, you've got a mission focus and you're trying to build community, but when it comes to business, one of the things that's really important is that it works, right? That people you have a product that people will pay for, that you have a model. So how are you balancing teaching business, but also teaching community and history and culture? That's a lot of moving parts.
Absolutely. Well, the mission of it is rooted in the business aspect. See, the more businesses that we get to launch and open, the more jobs that are created. I used to teach entrepreneurship, and the first question I'd ask is, why are you starting a business? Everybody said, generational wealth, money. I said, okay. You should also add creating jobs in your community. We shouldn't rely on the president, the mayor, the governor to create these jobs. Small businesses are the driving engine for these jobs. Unfortunately, a lot of small black businesses only create 0 jobs. It's just a person, they're solopreneurs.
Right, exactly.
So part of that mission is we believe we have a great product. Small businesses need business addresses. They need to be able to get their mail and their address. So we believe we have a good product. We have beautiful luxury offices that they can use. So we believe we have a good product. Once they're in, we're able to provide and push the mission that, hey, you are responsible for creating the jobs in your community, and we're here to help.
Right. So I love that idea that you're teaching businesses not just about business, but how to grow and how to scale and create more work. So you clearly are a little passionate about this play, which is awesome. So tell us a little bit about what's your vision for 1921 co-working.
Absolutely. So the goal with 1921 is to launch and open 1921s all over. So we've already been asked to come to Belize City, Belize, and Montego Bay, Jamaica, to put some manufacturing startups down there. The beauty of that is my goal is seeing people, think about it, people coming out of prison, returning citizens, being able to get a manufacturing certification through 1921, and then able to work for a manufacturing startup that we launch. They go from making no money to $60,000 a year, which means they're not planning to go back to jail. They can take care of their family. So my mission is that working with companies like Ideal Candidate, working with other people who are passionate about moving the community forward, that we have 1921s all over. That small businesses are, they've got their mailbox, they're getting their mail. There's a buzz, there's an excitement. One of the things that we have in the building we have these picture frames. It's a photo of an entrepreneur from Black Wall Street, a mini bio, and how to find out more about it. So you're surrounded by our ancestors everywhere you go in the building. We got about 15 of them. So no matter where you go, you're going to see a picture of that and you're going to be inspired. Like if this power couple, there were power couples back in 1920. This isn't new. We've done this before. We just got to remember.
Right. Wow. So do you have people want to learn more or they want to volunteer? Do you have a website we can send them to?
The website is 1921coworking.com and they can support us in any way. We have these incredible hoodies that say this hoodie helps create tech jobs in the community. We know we're a hoodie city. And mugs. So 1921coworking.com, there's multiple ways they can support us that way.
James, thank you so much. Nice to see
you.
Thank you for what you're doing, for creating this awesome space, and for coming here to share with our viewers about what you're doing. It's very powerful. Keep it up. On the other side of the break, we'll continue with the theme of putting Chicagoans to work. More specifically, efforts to close Chicago's tech opportunity gap through the efforts of an organization called the Xchange. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Darius Hillman. Joining me on a special one-hour edition of In the Arena, a once-in-a-lifetime conversation with a once-in-a-generation leader, librarian, author, curator, and one of Time Magazine's 100 most influential people in the world, Tracy Hall.
And I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. We have to make the connections and we have to fight for what's right, because if we don't, there's too much to lose. So I'm not interested in the Kool-Aid. I'm interested in justice. I'm not interested in the Kool-Aid and who made it and who drank it. I'm interested in equity. I'm interested in peace. I'm interested in us calling out and saying that war is wrong and that death is not the point of history.
Join us for this very special conversation on CAN TV Cable Channel 19 and streaming on cantv.org and the CAN TV Plus app. Experience the power of community television.
CAN TV is the lens through which Chicago's stories are told, harnessing the unifying power of community television. With CAN TV On Demand, immerse yourself in the richness of our city through exclusive stories and programs tailored just for you, connecting you to the heartbeats of our streets, the voices of our people, and the spirit that makes Chicago unique. Discover the strength of your community on CAN TV On Demand.
I'm financial expert Tamara Durbin. On the next episode, we'll talk about the why behind your budgeting with my guests, Winfred Burns and Arnell Brady. Join the conversation Wednesday at 7 p.m. exclusively on CAN TV Cable Channel 19 or stream live on cantv.org or on the CAN TV Plus app. Elevated conversation and storytelling. Experience the power of community television.
We turn our attention now to one of the most ambitious and promising efforts to close Chicago's tech opportunity gap, the Xchange, a new workforce training center designed to prepare Chicagoans, particularly from underrepresented communities, for high-growth careers in the technology sector. In a city where innovation is booming, but opportunity remains uneven, the Exchange is stepping in to help bridge that divide. Located in the heart of the city, this dynamic new hub is more than a training facility. It's a pipeline to the future. Through skills-based learning, industry partnerships, and a deep commitment to equity, the Exchange is preparing the next generation. Excuse me. Joining us tonight are the leaders behind the Exchange, along with an apprentice benefiting from the training to talk about the vision of the initiative, the real impact it's already having, and how the Exchange can be a model for workforce development across the country. Tell us about the Exchange.
Sure.
How did it start? Why? And what are you doing there?
Yeah, so I think that Xchange Chicago is really about how do we reshore IT work. Roughly $16.5 billion of IT spend by companies that are headquartered in Chicago. What we're really trying to do is bring that back to the communities in and around the Chicagoland area and create opportunities so that we can create that workforce of the future. And so how we got here is there's 3 co-founding organizations. There's P33, the Inclusive Talent Partner, there's Comer, which is the community partner, and there's SDI, which is the employer of record. And what we really saw is that Comer has a high school and a youth center, and what we saw is that as people got beyond the high school, they weren't really getting a good start in their careers. And what we found is that if we created this onshore training and delivery center, we really create those future opportunities for people to have a great start with these family sustaining careers.
So you start with, you already have, so these partnerships are really, really important. How did you get to the partnerships?
A year and a half ago, Comer came to the table with P33 and talked about the opportunity gap that exists on the south and west sides with regard to technology. We know that about 3% of all tech jobs are occupied by Black tech professionals. Mm-hmm. And so our effort—
Say that percentage again.
3%.
Yeah, that's what I thought you said. Wow.
There are millions of jobs in tech, and only about 3% are occupied by Black tech professionals. And so P33 and Comer came to the table to discuss this inequity and had a conversation with the CEO of SDI, the organization that Omowale works for, and they decided to come together and do something about it.
How important is it in having a hiring partner, right? And having SDI involved, right? To me, that right there is unusual. So how important is it from your perspective for the success of the Exchange, and why? Why did SDI come to the table?
I mean, I think that having a hiring partner is important, but also we work on behalf of other clients. So like we have financial services companies, we have healthcare companies that they contract with SDI for us to do work on behalf of them. And so that's where the opportunity comes from. And I think that within the whole equation, all of the parts are important, but when you think about the hiring partner, that creates that employment guarantee and also that continuity. And so as people come to the end of their project-based work with these different clients, they have the opportunity to really join that firm, or they can continue on and do projects with SDI. And so what we're really creating is saying, if you're coming with us for Exchange, you go through this program, you have this continuity and this continuous employment at a family sustaining wage. And so it gives people a great deal of confidence to go out and buy that first home or engage in the economy in a new way. And that's something that's so exciting for us.
So I have another question for you, but I want to bring Xavier into this conversation. Xavier, welcome. And tell us a little bit about what drew you to the Exchange.
What drew me to Exchange was I was always interested in tech and in IT, and previous to that I was working at Amazon, and during my tenure there I was trying to actually transfer into their IT department, and I was having some difficulties with that. I had some issues occur, and then after those issues occurred I realized it was time to move on to something better. So I started applying to things through LinkedIn, and I came across Exchange through LinkedIn. And when I first came across it, I was a little anxious because of the fact I was basically leaving my job to go into a training. But when I got to learn more about it and the fact that they had an apprenticeship lined up right afterwards, it was really heartwarming.
Right. And how has your experience been? So what have you learned the skills that you thought you wanted to learn, and how's it going?
Yes. It's actually been going really well. I started my full-time apprenticeship back in March, and I work for a utilities company, and I'm doing software testing. And I've learned so many different things. I never thought I would be interested in utilities until I saw how much came into the utilities and the importance that it plays.
Right? You never, the thing about utilities is you don't really pay attention to them until they're not working, right?
Yes.
So, well, so you like the work, and the skills you learned at the Exchange are helping you?
Yes, the skills I learned through Exchange were very useful because not only do they give you education, but they have virtual labs that you actually do where you get in to feel and actually get to try to attempt at doing the work. So you don't just get the understanding, you actually get the application.
Oh, wow. So was there a particular, when you started, you said you were nervous about going there. Was there anything that happened or an experience or something that the Exchange did that made you feel like, you know what, I can fit in here, I'm comfortable?
I would say it was after I started meeting with the staff they had for Exchange. And like they were very supportive and like heartwarming and opening. And I actually met with Wale during my apprenticeship time span. He explained to us like the whole process because originally we only understood what we were doing for the training. Mm-hmm. Like we understood it was going to be a very fast-paced 8 weeks, and then he came in to explain how the apprenticeship aspect will work and how we would get staffed with the clients. So they actually did work very closely with us to reassure that this was the right way to go.
Right. Wow, that's exciting. So, Charcoda, what I wanted to ask you was, so how are we measuring success, right? Because there's always programs, and how do we know that you're accomplishing what you set out to accomplish?
Yeah, we measure success by the amount of confidence and credibility we are building. So we are building confidence in Southside residents and being able to pursue, being confident, being comfortable in pursuing tech careers. We also measure success in return and repeat customers. So Omowale talked about our partners. When someone signs up when a company signs up for to take on 5 apprentices, and they come back in 2 or 3 months and say that they would like to upscale and take on an additional 10 or 15 apprentices.
Wow.
We know that we are moving the needle in the direction that we desire to.
And how often do you run programs? So if someone's watching and they're saying, wow, I have an interest in tech, I'd be interested. How often do you running classes?
So I would say that we're ongoing. So a lot of what we do is a demand-driven model. And so what we're constantly doing is we're reaching out to different clients, and we're trying to get an understanding of what their needs are from a customer discovery standpoint. And we work with several different training partners throughout the city of Chicago. City College of Chicago being a great example of someone that we have partnered with. SDI invested $1 million into Kennedy King. And so what we try to do is tap into the talent pool that is already there, as well as when there are special niche offerings from a client that say, you know what, I need something very specialized, then we can run a customized training program to make sure we meet those needs.
Wow, so it's almost a little bit like a training, but also a little bit of placement. And have you had issues with clients about wanting to take on the apprenticeships from the programs? How do you recruit your partners?
So I would say that is a desirable outcome for us, right? So like there's 2 sort of ways that, someone like Xavier can, as they're going through his software testing apprenticeship, something that's first desirable is that maybe the utilities company wants to bring him on full time. Another desirable outcome would be maybe they want to extend that project and say, you know what, he started at a year, we're going to extend this for 3 years, right? So that creates that repeated, recurring sort of like model for us. And I think that it's something that's very important to make sure that if we're doing the apprenticeship program and we're training this talent, we want to sort of understand, are we meeting the needs of our clients in such a way that they either say, we really want Xavier to be part of the team, or we want to expand the relationship with Xchange.
Right. So, this is a fantastic model, and not only because it's part in the tech space, but also because you're getting people into work. But it sounds like a lot of flexibility, you got to get the partners, you got to find the people, you got to train them appropriately. How much does that make it harder, do you think, or do you think this is the way new workforce development really should be thinking? Because you put a lot of flexibility into this program.
I do think that this is the way. Comer is a community anchor. We've been a part of Grand Crossing for the last 20 years. We have people who are highly interested in employment opportunities generally, but especially tech. We have over 300 people who have expressed interest in being a part of the Xchange program, but we make sure that we have the training on a parallel path to the sales, which is what Omawale is responsible for. So we make sure that as we are training and upskilling, we have the conversations with employers. And so it's almost like a one-to-one. And it feels really good that we go about it this way because we have apprentices, including Xavier, who participated in other training programs. And unfortunately, after they were trained, there weren't employment opportunities.
Right. So Xavier, some people are watching and they're thinking, wow, this sounds really interesting. What would you want someone watching you right now to know about your experience and why this has been a good opportunity for you?
Well, if there's anyone out watching that's interested in the program, I would like to say this: perseverance is key. It doesn't matter how much knowledge you have prior to starting. It doesn't matter whether or not you feel like you would be a fit within this, because a lot of the roles are actually soft skills. There's a lot of soft skills that are transferable in all jobs and in all positions that you can effectively use. Learning the IT skills is really about having the diligence to continue to study. IT is ever evolving, it's always changing. You're never going to know everything, you're never going to learn everything, and especially not in one setting. So it's more about just being adaptive and flexible, as you stated, with how they have to be flexible with dealing with the clients and how they handle our training. We have to be flexible and adapt to the environments that we're placed in.
Wow, that's so very well said. So if people are interested, how do they find the Xchange?
You can find the Xchange by going to xchangechicago.com. And it's Xchange without an E.
Right.
We start with an X.
Exchange.
You can also find us on our LinkedIn pages and our Instagram. Instagram, we're Xchange_Chicago. And on LinkedIn, we are Xchange Chicago.
Well, it's an incredible program that you've put together that's actually putting people to work. So thank you both for all that you're doing. And thank you for your commitment and your persistence to building a career and a pathway for yourself. It's really impressive. So glad that you could be here.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
And thank you for tuning in, Chicago. That's our time for now. Welcome back. We're back next week with a special edition of Chicago Newsroom 2.0, the state of education in Chicago, featuring guest host Adrian Segura and an incredible array of guests, including Kid First CEO Daniel Anello and newly elected Chicago School Board members Dr. Che Rhymefest Smith and Carlos Rivas Jr. It's an important conversation I promise you won't want to miss. Until next time, be well and well informed.